All right, welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. My name is Kyle Demian. I'm here with Renji Matthew. And today's topic is that retirement is not an age, but it's more so a number. We're going to break down and talk about how one actually retires, how retirement works, and how we help people, kind of plan that out and what that may look like for you to give you an idea of maybe how you can do it on your own to make sure that one day you can retire. So Renji, if you want to get us started and take it away, let's start talking about retirement.
Yeah, so something we we keep coming back to is taxes, right? So traditionally, people put money into 401ks or IRAs, which are classified as tax deferred accounts. So the whole point that financial advisors make when they recommend people to put money into 401ks and IRAs is, hey, you get a tax break now, but you defer taxes to later on when you have less expenses. But what they might forget to tell you is right now, most people are when they're working, they might have a mortgage, they might have kids living with them, so they have dependents. Those are all write-offs, right, when you do taxes. And the tax deferred account, that's deferring the taxes, so it's less taxes you're paying now. What they don't think about is when you retire, more than 95% of the time, you don't have a mortgage anymore. You don't have kids living with you. You're empty nesters, right? And now you're having to pay taxes on the deferred account that you start drawing from. And your income's less, because you don't have an income coming in now because you're in retirement. So in the eyes of the IRS, it might look like there's more income they can tax now. So when financial advisors talk about how, okay, yeah, now when you're retired, you don't need as much income to live off of. But what they're also not talking about is, hey, most people put aside pleasures that they want to go do, like travel or different things like that, for retirement, right? They're putting aside those things when they have time to enjoy that. But if you have less income and you're going to get taxed on the money in your 401ks and IRAs, that's less income that you're taking out. Where are you going to spend the money from to go enjoy life, to go travel? And now you might have grandkids you want to spoil. How are you going to spoil them if you don't have income, right? So what you want to be able to do is when you retire, you want to have just about the same income, if not more. That way you can enjoy those things you put off to retirement. And that way you can enjoy time with family. That way you can travel all you want. That way you can spoil your grandkids and stuff like that. So that's what we're kind of going to talk about. Look at numbers, show you what it looks like if you stayed the way you are, or if you decided to use secure accounts, tax-free or tax-deferred, what it could look like. Anything you want to add to that, Kyle?
Yeah, a couple things you were saying in there, which I think is kind of crazy, and it's just become the accepted norm. But like you were talking about your financial advisors talking about retiring on less income, right? And so not only are they, they're starting to tell you and set you up for a plan to retire on less income, but you're also not being able to retire until your mid to late 60s or maybe even your 70s, right? So financial advisors blow my mind consistently because the plans that they put you in and they help you plan for retirement, it's you're procrastinating on taxes till later. They're telling you to retire on less income, and then also you can't retire until your mid to late 60s, which just blows my mind, right? And I don't know why people follow that advice. I think it's just become the accepted norm that we work 40 years, and then maybe we get to a point to retire, and then the average life expectancy nowadays is what, 76 to maybe 80 years old. So you're working 40 years to retire when you're 65, and maybe you get a good 10 years to enjoy retirement. Although if people are passing away at 76, 77, 78, how many of those years are you actually healthy enough to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, the fruits of their savings, right? And you mentioned having grandkids, wanting to spoil them, and imagine not working and all the free time you're going to have. You would want to be able to spend your time and be able to travel or spending with your grandkids or, it just blows my mind that people are okay with, as we'll look at our example here coming up, maybe they're making $75,000 a year while they're working. And it's pretty common, pretty typical. When you go to retire, you're retiring on maybe half of the income that you were making when you're working. And to me, that's just unacceptable. But to the majority of Americans, like that's the pipe dream that they've been sold. And so we'll talk about some ways to help you guys retire sooner, retire more confidently, and what I believe should be everyone's goal is to retire not with less income, but to retire with more income. Right? When you go to retire, you don't want to retire when you're making $75,000 a year working and have to go down to 30,000. Like, no, let's retire and make $100,000 a year. Like, let's have more in retirement than when we're working. Right? So that's going to be some of the things that we talk about today. And that kind of gets us into, retirement's not an age. It's a number. People too often think of retirement being at 65. And yes, you do need to pick an age as like a target to make sure that you're on path to hit your goals. But if you get to 65 and you only have $100,000 saved up, you're not going to be able to retire at 65. The number you have to be able to retire nowadays, there's been some articles that have come out over the last few months that like you need to have saved up between $2 to $3 million to be able to retire and live comfortably, which is crazy. For some people, it could take 40 to 50 years. But what most people don't realize, and what we're going to talk about here in a second, is you can actually get to the same income from $2 million saved up just by investing into assets. And you can do that in 10 years rather than taking 40 years to get to that same point. Right, Renji, is there anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, this is why we focus on passive income so much, because like Kyle said, it's not an age, it's a number. So we talk about how financial freedom is what passive income over expenses, right? So if you have that number of, okay, how much do I need to make to be financially free? And for example, let's say your bills come out to be about 3,000 a month. If you're making 4 or 5,000 a month passively, you're financially free, right? Because you have enough to pay your bills and extra to do whatever you want with. So if that's your goal, if you set your goal as that, you can retire 5, 10 years from now, right? Or earlier if you figure it out fast, So it's not an age to figure out. It's a number in the sense of how much income do you need to survive and enjoy life. And something else is taxes. If you own a business, there's so many more ways to be tax free, not defer. Because with traditional retirement plans, you're deferring taxes, so you eventually have to pay that, right? And the problem is taxes in the future might be a lot higher, right? Because that's another thing, misconception that financial advisors talk about. It's like, oh, you could defer it down to later when taxes come down and you pay less in taxes. What they forget to mention is when 401ks and IRAs were originally created, it was back in the late 60s, early 70s when taxes were in the 70 percentile. So we are in the lower tax break right now. So it made
Yeah.
sense back then, because could you imagine paying 70% of your income to taxes? So that's why they came up with that. So now at that time it made sense. Now it doesn't make as much sense because our national debt is close to 35 trillion. So the only way to pay that off is by increasing taxes. So if you keep deferring to later, you're going to end up having to pay more in taxes when you retire, on top of having less income, on top of not having write-offs because you're empty nesters, you don't have a mortgage, all of these things. So you're going to be living off of less and less than you realize. So what we try to harp on is passive income, because if you start investing into businesses, there's so many more tax benefits for you, incentives for you, to where you can be tax free instead of deferring it. That way, that means you don't ever have to pay that tax because you are incentivized to do business. Um, but yeah, anything you want to add to what we just talked about, Kyle?
No, I think that's good. And one of the things you touched on is like, finding the number, and I call it your financial independence number. And for everybody it's different, but how much income would you want to have a year? Um, what would make you be financially free, right? Or what would be able to allow you to retire and live your life comfortably? And I was just thinking of the math as you were talking. And let's say your number was to have $100,000 a year of income. Most people don't realize, but it's actually a pretty easy formula. You multiply $100,000 by 25, and that would tell us how much you would need to have saved up to get $100,000 a year in income from that account. So that's a simple formula to figure out your financial independence number. $100,000 times 25 would be $2.5 million. So you would need to have saved up $2.5 million to be able to safely and comfortably live on $100,000 a year of income, right? And where am I getting this number from? How do we help people plan and figure this out? I can go ahead and share my screen and we'll dive through that together. And as I'm doing that, Renji, anything else you want to add before we kind of dive into this with the viewers?
No, let's go in.
Okay, cool. So, um, so this is our forecaster that we use to help our clients plan out, where they're at currently, what their goals are, and then what their retirement's going to look like. There's a lot of different spaces because a lot of different, inputs that we can put in to help our clients figure this out. But we're just going to keep it super simple. This is just estimating a 40-year-old that wants to retire at 65. So they got 25 years until retirement, currently making about $100,000 a year. And then if you see here, we can even estimate for Social Security. We can estimate if they have a pension. And then over here is like their personal savings. You guys remember we've done a podcast in the past where we talked about the three stools to retirement income planning. And the three stools to retirement income planning, and that's Social Security, your pensions, and your personal savings, right? And so these three are all calculated and accounted for here. And then once we get to this next screen, this actually goes and shows us what your retirement income projections are. And I have it highlighted down here in blue. So this individual, remember, is 40-year-old, making $100,000 a year. And we can come here and show them, hey, if you don't make any changes, your income in retirement is only going to be $40,000 a year before taxes. After taxes, you're down to about $39,000 a year. And how does that make you feel? Most people have never seen retirement projections like this, so they have no idea where they're going to end up. But imagine seeing this for a 40-year-old, knowing that they have 25 years of time to correct this and make some changes, right? And here's the crazy thing. There's a spot on this calculator. We can say, hey, what if you start saving an extra $750 a month towards your retirement, right? What kind of difference is that going to make? And this will quickly show us right here. Now your after-tax income is going to be up to $55,000 a year. Oops. It's going to be up to $55,000 a year. So you can quickly see that this is how financial advisors, financial professionals, retirement planners, this is how we can show you the numbers and help you make some tweaks and adjustments to help you achieve your financial goals. Right. And if you're doing this yourself, like you just don't have access to these type of calculators where you can figure out this information and at least, number one, make sure that you're on track. Right. Because if your goal was to retire and have $100,000 a year in income, but you never made any of these corrections, imagine getting to age 65 and then you're having to settle for $40,000 a year. That's 60% less than what you were making and maybe what you wanted to retire on. Right. So Renji, as I'm sharing my screen, I know I have control of it, but if you want to pinpoint out any other parts of this calculator, feel free to let me know. I can click through it. But is there anything I'm missing or anything you want to add on the retirement income calculators that we have here?
No, I think you explained it well. Only thing I would add is, guys, there are tax-free and tax-deferred accounts out there if you're wanting to stick the regular traditional route of retiring at a specific age, right? Again, we like to focus on the passive income because if you can do passive income, then these are not going to look the same at all because when you retire, you can retire off the same amount of income. Because if you're making, let's say, for example, we talk about real estate. If you're doing real estate and you're passively making let's say 10 grand, to make math simple, if you're making 10 grand a month, that's 120,000 a year. Now, when you retire and if you keep those assets, it's going to stay the same, right? Uh, but with an active job, when you retire, because you're not actively working, you're trading time for money. So since you're not trading that time anymore, your income's going to drop a lot. And that's where saving money is going to do a huge benefit for you, right? So if you want to go the traditional route of retiring at a certain age, you have to calculate how much money you have to put aside. And that's what Kyle is talking about here. And with that, if you're younger, there's tax-free options that can do way better for you, and then there's tax deferred options too, but both are secure. And what do I mean by secure? We love these because for people that are wanting to work traditional jobs and want to retire at a specific age, because your money's secure. So when the market goes up, you go up with it, but when the market comes down, you plateau. So your principal and your growth is never affected when the market goes down. You always have that protected in there. You have a floor. So now when you retire, you're going to have way more money when you retire than you would in a traditional retirement plan. Because example that we bring up all the time, let's say you have 100,000 in the traditional retirement plan. If the market goes down 50%, you're at 50,000 now. Now, when the market goes back up 50%, you're not at 100 like most people think you are. You're going to be at 75,000 because 50% of 50,000 is 25. So 25 plus 50 is 75. So imagine how long it will take you to get to that number because the market's going up and down, right? And it takes longer to go back up than it does when the market goes down. So imagine if you had that same scenario with a secure account with 100,000, with the market going down 50, you're still at 100. Now when the market goes up 50, you're at 150, and that's just in 1 year. So imagine over 10, 20, however long you have till retirement, how much more money you could retire with. So again, we love the passive income, buying assets that cash flow. But if you want to go the traditional route, there are far better options out there than a traditional 401k or an IRA.
Absolutely. And you touched on, the indexing accounts, right? Having the gains in the market without the losses. And I had a question the other day that somebody was comparing that to being in the market, right? And here's the thing, like, you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. So we're not saying all of your money should be in one of these accounts. We're not saying all of your money should be in the stock market. But whatever you're comfortable with, everybody has a different risk tolerance. But for your safe money, the money that you otherwise would keep in a bank account, or some people have CDs that they put their money in, like those type of accounts are much, much better alternatives out there that are available, and you just may not realize it, right? So for any of your safe money that you want outside of the market, these other options make a lot of sense because you get the growth of the market without any of the risk or without any of the downsides, right? So you're really getting the best of both worlds. You're getting some growth with the market when the market's doing well, but you're getting the protection when the market's going down. And the truth of the matter is, nobody can predict what the market's going to do. Not even the big banks or the large firms like Yahoo Finance or Bank of America. They both incorrectly predicted what the market was going to do just last year. And, with that, um, I think that's a good point for us to, start wrapping up the
Yeah,
show. Renji, anything you want to end with for us?
yeah. For anyone that's new to our podcast, when we've talked about indexing in the past, so all indexing means you're mirroring with the market, but without actually being in the market. So when the market goes up, you can go with it, but when the market goes down, since you're not actually in the market, you don't lose any money. And one of the questions that I get a lot of times when I explain that to people is, how is that possible? How are the companies able to do that? Well, let me put it this way. It's similar to what a bank does, right? So let's say you have 100,000 saved in the bank. The bank takes that money and puts it in the market, gives it back to you in the form of loans and credit cards and stuff like that. But if the money that they have in the market goes up or down, it doesn't affect you any. They'll give you whatever percentage every year, 0.05, it was just average around the country. So that's all you're getting. If they lose money in the market or make money in the market, it doesn't affect you any. It's the same way that these companies do these secure accounts. They are mirroring the market without actually being in it. So you're contractually protected that your money will never lose, but you will gain. I like to say they like to partner with you compared to the bank where you're not profiting anything when they make money. But with these companies, they're partnering with you. So if they make money, they split that with you. So that's why you have so much more money when over time than you do actually being in the market or saving that money in your bank because you're not growing anything in the bank. That's the only thing I wanted to add, just for people that haven't been on before.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And with that, that'll wrap up our show today, talking about how retirement's not an age, retirement's a number. Usually the number is going to be different for every single person that we talk to. But, for you, think about it for yourself. What amount would you need to have in retirement to have a successful retirement? Most people think retirement's an age. But like in our example that we showed, if you got to age 65, you were making $75,000 a year while you were working, and then you go to retire, and now you're looking at retiring out of $40,000. Maybe you can't retire at 65. You got to work a few extra years, right? This is the power of planning and knowing for sure ahead of time, number one, when you can retire, if you can ever retire. But then, the last thing is knowing what adjustments and what kind of savings or investments you need to do today and now to help you reach your goals of getting to a successful and fruitful retirement, right? With that, I think that wraps up our show today. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. As always, make sure to drop your comments below. Let us know if you guys found this video helpful. If you did, share it with a friend that's maybe thinking about retirement or thinking about investing and saving for their future. And let us know if there's anything that we can do to help. Subscribe to our podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Have a good one.